Why hello there, and welcome to a Delusions of Mediocrity battle report where the dice rolls are rubbish and nothing really matters. This is our first battle report on the channel, so please bear with us for any technical issues and feel free to leave feedback and comments in the comments section. We're going to jump straight in. This is just a friendly game for my Deepkin versus my mate Sylvaneth, just on a weeknight. So here we go. We are playing Border Wars, and as you can see, this is after deployment. Let me just go through the list quickly with what we've got on screen. So my opponent has 10 dryads, 3 units of hunters with bows. He's brought a Drycher up here. He's got a branch wraith up here. As you can see, there's another branch wraith hiding around here. 5 revenants. This is actually one big unit of 20 dryads up here, and a tree lord ancient who is just hiding behind this bit of scenery up here. He's running a battalion. I can't remember which one, but I think it's the one where his units, his dryads, get a little bit better when they're close to one of the branch wraiths, and this branch wraith here has whichever magic artifact allows the Kurnoth hunters to re-roll to hit. So he's brought a very, very shooty list. For my Deepkin, what do I have going on here? I've got some Reavers down here. I've brought 20 Eternal Guard as my allies. This is mostly just for some bodies, because I've been finding that the Deepkin really lack numbers later in the game. I've got 10 more Reavers here, a big blob of 20 Thralls. 6 Morsar Guard here, that I haven't put the riders on yet, so forgive me for that. 6 Morsar Guard hiding behind this bit of mystical terrain here. And I've got my Tidecaster General is right about here next to the ship. And then I've put a Soul Scryer off in the Ether Sea along with a unit of 10 Thralls and a Keelian King who has the Ethereal Amulet, because 3 up ignoring rend is amazing. So here we go. I've popped one ship here to just try and give myself a bit of cover around this objective if I ever get there. Also maybe a bit of chip damage to his units whilst they're around there. And same reasoning here, just to try and give my units trying to protect this objective here a bit of cover. I've remembered to not leave, in theory, I think. I've left enough room between the Eternal Guard and the ship so that I don't take damage. So, because of ranges, my opponent gave me first turn, so let's see how it goes. So this is after the end of my movement phase. I've brought 20 Thralls up here just to take on this objective. I've brought on first turn my small unit of 10 Thralls here with the King, which you can just see here, and the Tidecaster at the back. Brought my units here, the eels are hugging the mystical to give myself a bit of protection here, same as the Reavers are trying to hold my home objective, keeping that 6 up safe. The eels I'm being fairly cautious with because he's got some nasty shooting, and the idea here is to basically give him something to think about with the Thralls up on this flank, whilst using the Deepkin shooting rules, as he can only shoot the nearest unit, whether they're Deepkin or not. He can only shoot the nearest enemy unit. So these poor Eternal Guard are just going to get mowed down by giant hunter bows. But that's okay. They're cheaper ships. And I'm controlling 3 of the objectives. My shooting does nothing because everyone has had to run. So we go into my charge phase, and I get my Soul Scryer to point at these dryads with the Finger of Doom to make them easier to charge, and the Thralls go in and do their job and just wipe this unit out. That's just his casualty pile. And he got in, piled in round, and just made mincemeat of them. This is dual fold. I wanted him to have to think about how he's going to commit these dryads, and also it's another enemy unit that he has to shoot. So, I mean, they're not exactly chaff, but I'd rather Dryker's mortal wounds go into them than into my ethereal king over there. So I score 5 points, and we go into my opponent's turn. So this is a few highlights from his command phase. With one of his wizards, he's able to cast the Geminids, which I always forget the range on these things, and they just go bam through 3 units, doing 2 damage, and a couple of damage here. He then moves up, and as you can see, he's brought Dryker up here, brought his Dryads up as far as he can, and his plan was to basically nuke as much of my stuff as possible so he scores that objective. And he's being fairly cautious up here. There you go, you can see his Treeman Ancient has popped out here. So he opens fire with just about everything. Dryker just very, very easily just wipes out the thralls, and his Kurnoth Hunters just take out 20 Eternal Guard like they just weren't even there. So at this point, and I think he scores this objective, so he scores 3 points. So at the moment it's 5-3 to me. Things are looking okay for me. My plan here is, hopefully, if I get priority, either consolidate here with the thralls or go in and start making a dent on these guys. Have my eels charge up. I didn't flip the tide, so this is my flood tide. This would be my flood tide run and charge. And same, get my eels, even with -1 to hit, I figure they should be able to take care of Dryker, and I would have the king to go in. But obviously, my opponent wins the priority roll and gets a double turn on me into turn 2. So here we go. This is after his movement phase. He's shuffled his hunters up a little bit just to get some better targets. Some Dryads have come up here, pushing up with his Treeman Ancient. He's not sure yet whether he wants to commit them, but he wants to be able to shoot into my thralls and get stuck in. Again, forming a protective barrier over here. And we've got Dryker here. He's going to have some work to do. Post-shooting, the Treeman Ancient and the bows have just ripped into the thralls. Now, I've tried to take as many back as possible, just to make his charges a little bit difficult. On the left flank, I don't think I took a picture, but Dryker just took out the Reavers that have strayed a bit too far forward. And he has to use a command point to get the charge in on the Tree Lord, but what he's actually able to do is tag the Thrall unit here at the back and then use his 3-inch pile-in to actually hit the eels. And sorry, it's a Spirit of Durthu. My bad. This is actually a Spirit of Durthu. And by doing this, what he's actually able to do is I'm not able to use my eel shocks at the start of the combat phase, because at the start of the combat phase he isn't actually within the 3 inches, which was great play. So he goes in, kills 3 of the eels just like it's not even a thing. Luckily, I'm able to chip a bit of damage off on him actually. I mean, 3 thralls will still hit pretty hard with that damage too. And that's what we're going to go for. I then have to spend a command point. You're not able to see it, but my general is actually in 12 inches there to keep the eels alive from the battle shock. These guys I'm just resigned to just dying horribly, so there you go. So yeah, so my opponent scores this objective, the one on the other flank, and his own one, so this brings the score to 5-8 to my opponent. So we go into my turn. What I've decided to do is that I actually need to push a little bit here. So I've cast off the... I had the Malevolent Maelstrom in my list as well, just to be able to helpfully deal with any Dryad summons that he's got. So far I've been quite lucky and he's failed any Dryad summoning that he's tried. I bring my king up, I bring my Soulscry up, and I bring my eels up, ready just to make a mess of my left flank, his right flank. And I've also, because I can run and shoot, brought these up just because I realised I couldn't just leave them there to get shot. I've got to push on this one just to try and make a bit of a dent in these dryads. My eels and my king go in on this side. In the shooting phase, I'm only able to pick off a couple of these dryads at the top. That -1 to hit, and reavers, despite the volume of shots, are not the best anyway. Hitting on 5s and winning on 4s with the dryad's tree protection is just a bit naff. I think I killed 1 or 2. Now here I make the mistake of I actually pop the eel shock, so the mortal wounds, the voltaic blast from the eels on Dryker, and in retrospect I think that was probably overkill. I could have saved those for trying to deal with this block of nastiness here in the middle, but hey ho, at least that's the dryads gone, and I've just absolutely obliterated this flank. And on the right hand flank, yes, I lose my last few eels, but I am able, with the, before that happens, with their voltaic blasts, I am actually able to get rid of the tree lord. Can't remember exactly what they died to, but there you go. So I then score the left objective and my home objective, which brings us to a 8-8 score. But at this point I'm not entirely sure how to feel about how things are going. One eel should be able to make a mess of this. I've got some reavers here which I can then park wherever I need to, but things are looking grim. I've lost a large amount of my army, but I've taken out my opponent's 2 big hitter models, so just have to see. We go for the priority into round 3, and I actually get the double. So what am I able to do with this? I bring my left flank of eels and king round. I think this looks like it's after the charge phase. What I decided to bring my reavers back down to this objective, mostly because I know he's got the revenants at the top that can just teleport down and take some stuff off. I leave my soul scry to hold this objective. Now I had the option really to which one I wanted to secure, but this one is worth 4 points to my opponent. This one's only worth 2, so I figure this guy can just hold this for me. These ones will hold down here and we'll see. So as you can see, my eel's gone in and done some damage, but not as much as I would have hoped. And up here, between his mortal wounds, their attacks, all the combat phases from here on out with the hunters up here, my opponent does the short pile in but gets to reroll saves, and he's able to just pass a load of them. That reroll is amazing, and I kind of figured that these are a shooting unit, so they'd be quite easy to take down in combat, but actually no, they're still hunters. They still have a 4-up rerollable, and it's still horrible. I managed to kill a few, two, do some damage onto a third one, which is okay, but my big error here is that actually round here, I can't remember if you see yet, you can just see here the weapon from the branch wraith, and that's the model that is giving these guys rerolls to hit. And in my eagerness to kill the shooters, I left this model alone, and that will come back to haunt me. Note to future self, if there's a key model that is buffing the big operating unit of the opponent's army, probably best to take it out. But again, we live, we learn. Well, we learn. And this pretty much was just going to turn into a massive grind between now and the end of the game. So that's the end of my turn 3, and I score this objective and this one for another 3 points, which brings it to an 11-8 to me into my opponent's turn. I mean, so he backs off with these guys, backs off over here, runs his branch wraith away, and he decides to teleport his revenants over on this side. No hero there, so it's a 9-inch charge going into his charge range, and he rolls it, and I think he missed on the first one, but used their ability to reroll 1 dice and gets in. In they go. I think he rolled a 5 and a 1 or something like that, re-rolled the 1 and then popped the 4 that he needed to get in. A big play that, you know, played for and got, I suppose. So here, yeah, my poor Soul Scryer is probably because he's not painted, if we're honest. He survives the first round of hits, but does nothing back because, well, that's not his job. Up here you can see this sort of grindy combat. I'm killing some hunters. He's in his shooting phase. He's picking off eels. The re-rolling to hit in combat and in shooting is just being horrible. Overall this turn, he is able to still score this objective, and his home objective, which brings it to an 11-8 to him. We roll priority, and as is a pattern in this one, he actually gets the double. So he's doubled me from 1 into 2, I doubled him from 2 into 3, and he's doubling me 3 into 4. And going into round 4, so he scores 5 points for this round, bringing the score to 11-13. So we go into his round 4, and if I'm honest, not a whole lot happens. He takes out this guy. There's some more combat that happens here, and he actually takes out my eels. I think this might actually be at the end of my turn, but this is essentially the shape of things towards the end of round 4. He scored these 3 in his round 4 to go to 11-18. There's a scrap here. He kills my guy here. So into my round 4, this is what I'm going for. I've scored this. I've tagged this objective with this guy. I'm going to try and hope and bring him back round. I'm just going to have to hold this one here, and I'm going for it. These guys in my turn 4, what I really want is to take this thing in. So in my round 4, I can run and charge again. So they're running, they're moving up. I think, yeah, I decided not to shoot so I could try and charge them in because they're still quite handy in combat, and I fail, which is not amazing. So I only score 3 points for this one in here, which brings it to 14-18 at the end of round 4, which is a shame. I could have really done with the 2 points there. And I win priority 4 into 5, and I think this is probably in my round 5. These guys just move up and just unleash absolute hell on the poor little tree revenants. So I'm going to score this one. He's going to not going to get through this one. My poor king is doing his absolute best. My opponent's also able to occasionally regrow a hunter as well with his little branch wraiths as a backup here. I've cast the moving spell to secure this objective with this chappie, just to make sure, so I could then send my eel round to try and kill. Just because I wasn't entirely sure how I was going to end in the math, so I just wanted the extra support. So, but I failed to kill a branch wraith back here, and score 5 points in my round 5, which is brings the score to 19-18 to me. But in my opponent's turn, all he has to do is run some models down here. We didn't even roll any dice for his round 5, I think. All he has to do is bring some of his hunters all the way around here, and a branch wraith that I wasn't able to kill earlier, to pip this objective off me. So he then scores 1, 2, 3 points, bringing the final score to 19-21 loss. 19 points to me, 21 points to my Sylvaneth opponent. Really tight game. Really tight game. Great fun. That big fight against the hunters, I just have to know that they are quite tanky. And I also didn't realise just how squishy Dryker was in a combat. A Spirit of Durthu, fairly nasty in combat, but I knew that already. And I do think the big mistake that probably swung this for me, swung this against me rather, was not killing his branch wraith that was buffing all his hunters. But there we go. I'm still fairly new to AOS 2, still learning. Deepkin are a crap load of fun, really quick, really killy, but just can't take the grind. And being on the receiving end of a double turn of a shooting army is just horrible when all your models are really, really squishy. But there we go. Hopefully onwards and upwards, and I'll see you for the next game.